Now, the top story this week, or at least it should have been, had the mainstream media actually picked up on it when they should have, is the whole Manurewa Marae scandal. Now, this has been in the news for a little over a week now, and yet the mainstream outlets like One News and News Hub have only been discussing it really a couple days. It's simply not good enough at all. But it just goes to show that if it doesn't fit the agenda, the mainstream media doesn't care. And in this case, they were forced to speak on it because there's 12 government agencies investigating it. So what is the Manurewa Marae scandal? Well, there's a couple kind of elements to it. But essentially, on one hand, you've got Takutai Tarsh Kemp, who is now the MP for Tamaki Makaurau, a Te Pāti Māori MP, who has turned up on election day, which is not really the right thing to do, to turn up at a polling booth on election day. They've also been allegedly breached the Electoral Act by committing the offence of treating during a certain time period leading up to the election. And additionally, on top of all of that, we've got some alleged misuse of data, or even collection of data, which is related to the Waiparaira Trust and so forth, which is all through John Tamihere, who, by the way, is the Te Pāti Māori president. So it all kind of links in very nicely there. And I've got a couple of things on there which links that even more. A couple of things here to say which links to that even more. But I'm going to do this in a very simplistic manner. I want to go over just the key points. There's a lot of articles at the moment, a lot of insights that people have that are personal insights, I should say, that you can find online relatively easily, particularly on X at the moment, which will give you a much more in-depth insight into this. And so I would recommend doing so. But I'm just going to go over some key points here. Firstly, Takutai Tarsh Kemp, who is now the MP for Tamaki Makaurau for Te Pāti Māori, showed up on election day with her family from Taupo. Now, you really shouldn't be showing up at the polling booth as the MP of that electorate, or as the candidate for that electorate. Nonetheless, she did. I'm sure she can try and explain that away. Fortunately for her, it's a pretty high threshold, and that's the most minor of the offences, quite frankly. And it's worth noting she showed up to the Manurewa Marae polling booth, to my knowledge, and she was at the time the CEO, or the chief executive, of the Manurewa Marae. And so that shows the conflict of interest. That shows that she has a lot of control over what's going on there, and so it makes sense that she could get away with this behaviour. Additionally, there's the alleged breach of the Electoral Act in the offence known as treating. Now, treating is let's just say, in a certain time period before the election, a political party, a candidate, so forth, they cannot do anything that would be probably consistent with a bribe. So, for example, they can't give away free food to, essentially convince people to vote a particular way, or for it could be misconstrued that way, for example, right? So before the election, in that time period where treating is not allowed, I bumped into now Takanini MP of the National Party, Rima Nakali. Now, Rima Nakali, lovely lady, I met her, had a chat, 10, 15 minutes. Now, she explained to me what treating was, and so she because I met her at the coffee club, and so that's the context. So we were having a quick chat, and she was explaining this to me because it's fundamentally important that she made that clear. Not that I expected her to do anything of the sort, of course, but she explained that to me. And the fact that was the first thing that came to mind shows that she has integrity, shows that she was actively trying to abide by the Electoral Act. She was not going to be caught out breaking any of the rules there. So that was my first real insight into treating. And that was, I think, September, October last year. And that's something that Te Pāti Māori seemingly haven't followed, because they were advertising the following: free food at the polling booth, free hangi, donuts, hot chocolate, coffee on proof of voting. Now, this is being advertised by Te Pāti Māori for this. They now deleted those posts because obviously it doesn't look good, does it? Now, that is just point blank treating. I don't know why the threshold is supposedly so high and too high for that to be referred to the police, as the Electoral Commission has decided not to refer that to the police. I do not know what more you want. Like, seriously, we all know, anyone following Te Pāti Māori socials at that time knows this was happening. There were allegations of it on the day, in the days following. The fact that, one, it's taken months for us to get to this point, and for the Electoral Commission to turn around and say, nah, we're not referring that as a matter to the police or anything like that. We're not considering that needs much more input. I mean, I don't trust the Electoral Commission fundamentally. It just makes no sense. I feel like if this was a different political party, they might be taking a different stance. Now, additionally, Te Pāti Māori merchandise was allegedly handed out amongst electoral staff. Now, of course, these are staff rather than actual voters themselves, but if it was at all present and visible to those voting, I mean, that's not particularly good look either, and so that's something else that is being looked into, or at least it very much should be. But ultimately, it's a high threshold for all this stuff, and that's why the Electoral Commission hasn't referred it to the police. Now, I have it on very good authority from a very reliable source that a Waiparaira Trust board member with no affiliation with Manurewa Marae at all was actually at Manurewa Marae on at least the main polling day, if not every polling day, and was basically like an usher at the door. Now, he was described as giving off a mafia-type vibe. You know, the vibe of he's there, but his intentions aren't very clear. You kind of know there's something a little bit fishy and off going on. That's the vibe. And that was the vibe that he gave off the day it happened. This is not some hindsight vibe. This is a vibe that was very much present and aware and commented on at the time by this individual, and of course doubling down on it now. So the fact that this guy on the Waiparaira board is there in the first place is weird. The fact that he's then ushering people in is weird, and the fact that he's giving off a vibe that he's kind of there for alternative reasons that aren't really what meets the eye, that also suggests that something fishy is going on. And as we can see with this investigation, something fishy indeed was going on. Not only did we have Takutai Tarsh Kemp show up, but we had several allegations of the Electoral Act being breached. And all of it seems to be centered around Manurewa Marae and the Waiparaira Trust. Interestingly, the Waiparaira board member, whilst having no affiliation with Manurewa Marae, is, of course, working for the Waiparaira Trust, right? The Waiparaira Trust chief executive being John Samihere also being the president of Te Pāti Māori, and the candidate who was chief executive of Manurewa Marae being Takutai Tarsh Kemp. So, the affiliation isn't there, but it's also there, right? You can understand why he was actually there, even though, technically speaking, he probably shouldn't have been. To conclude, this just really highlights that Te Pāti Māori has no regard for our systems. They don't have any regard for maintaining the integrity of our systems. I mean, of course, in the last couple of weeks, they've rejected our parliament outright. They've rejected the authority of our parliament. But also in the process of getting elected to our parliament, they've allegedly breached several parts of the Electoral Act. They've clearly pushed the boundaries as far as they possibly can to the point where they've likely broken them. They're lucky that we have a seemingly compliant electoral commission who's going to let them get off scot-free without referring the matters to the police, which still doesn't make any sense to me. How is there not enough evidence in this case to show that they have clearly breached that act? I don't know. But whatever. There are many, many, many government agencies investigating this, and maybe that'll apply some pressure. Maybe that'll result in something occurring here. Maybe that'll result in consequences. Maybe that will result in a by-election. I don't know. Should there be a by-election? Based on what I've heard and seen, there bloody should be. You may disagree. Ultimately, I'm all for Te Pāti Māori packing up and shipping off tomorrow with respect to their officers in Wellington. Because they've got no respect for our parliament. They don't recognise it at all anyway. So why bother showing up? Why bother taking the seat away from the likes of Penny Henare, who I've met on one occasion? I'm not particularly a fan, but hey, I don't believe in getting cheated out of a seat either. And I'm not saying that that's a fact that he was cheated, but this doesn't look good. There was treating allegedly going on. I mean, there's social media posts basically proving it, even if they have been deleted now. There was Takutai Tarsh Kemp showing up on the day at the polling booth in the electorate that she is standing for. There was the alleged misuse of data from the Waiparaira Trust to enable them to try and transfer people from the general roll over to the Māori roll in order to help boost their numbers vote-wise. This is all linked, and it's all very, very fishy. ultimately, when we come back to it all, John Tamihere is at the center of all of this. Even though we can try and hide behind a range of different things, John Tamihere is this focal point of everything happening with Te Pāti Māori, everything happening with this particular controversy, with Manurewa Marae, with Waipareira Trust, all of this. He is one of the most corrupt individuals in this country with respect to politics and respect to these kind of iwi-led organizations and so forth. He cannot be trusted. He lacks integrity. And that's truly saying something about politicians, because we all know how it goes. You can't trust a politician as far as you can throw them.